When I look back now, it almost feels like someone else's life. So much of what I believed wasn't true. I used to think my family was honest, open, and strong. We weren't perfect. No family is. But I always thought our love was real, solid, unbreakable. But the day I found out what they'd been hiding from me, something inside me changed forever. It wasn't a loud discovery. No one screamed. No doors slammed. It was just silence, the kind that makes you feel the walls around you are listening. That morning, the house smelled of rain. I remember wiping the kitchen counter, listening to the clock tick above the stove. Everything felt ordinary, and yet I had this strange weight in my chest, like my body knew something before my mind did. A phone call came. It was my aunt, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her voice trembled as she said my name. "Can you come over, dear? There's something I need to tell you. About your mother." I froze. My mother had passed away 2 years earlier. We'd buried her with tears, flowers, and unspoken words. What could possibly be left to tell me now? I remember sitting down, the dishcloth still in my hand. My heart beat so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. That was the moment everything began to unravel, slowly, quietly, painfully. And though I didn't know it yet, my life would never look the same again. Soft music swells, fade to gentle transition. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names and secrets rarely stayed buried. Our house was a modest one, pale yellow walls, a garden full of jasmine, and an old wooden gate that squeaked every time someone came in. My mother, Layla, was the heart of our home. She was gentle but firm, always putting others before herself. My father, Yusuf, worked long hours at the post office. He wasn't much of a talker, but when he laughed, the whole house seemed to brighten. I was their only child, quiet, curious, and often lost in daydreams. My mother used to brush my hair by the window and tell me stories about her childhood. I remember the way her hands moved, graceful, but with a kind of sadness she never explained. We had relatives who visited sometimes. My mother's sister, Aunt Salma, was the closest to us. She was loud, emotional, and always carried gossip like a basket full of ripe fruit. But despite her drama, she loved us, or so I believed. As I grew older, I noticed small cracks in our picture-perfect family. There were times when my parents would stop talking suddenly when I entered the room. Sometimes my father's eyes looked at me like he was searching for something familiar, something he couldn't find. At 16, I brushed those moments aside. Teenagers don't think too deeply about silences, but I remember one night, a stormy one, when I woke to hear my mother crying quietly in the kitchen. I crept down the hall, but when she saw me, she smiled, wiped her tears, and said, "Just missing my own mother, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." I believed her. For years, I believed everything she said. After I went to college, life moved fast. I met Rahim, kind, patient, with a laugh that reminded me of sunlight. We married young, and though we didn't have much, we built a life filled with small joys. My mother was proud. She came to visit often, bringing homemade pickles and stories I'd heard 100 times before. My father, though quieter with age, always gave me that same soft smile, the one that made me feel safe, even when the world didn't. Then came the day of the accident. A car crash took my father instantly. My mother survived for a few weeks, long enough for me to hold her hand and whisper that I loved her. Before she closed her eyes for the last time, she said something strange. She said, "If you ever feel lost, go to Salma. She'll tell you what I couldn't." At the time, I thought it was grief speaking, or maybe confusion from the painkillers. I didn't ask questions. I just kissed her forehead and said, "Rest now, Mama." After the funeral, I locked that memory away. For 2 years, I focused on my family, my husband, our daughter, the small bakery we opened near the main road. I told myself the past was behind me, but grief has a way of whispering when you least expect it. That rainy morning when my aunt called, it was like my mother's voice echoed through the static. Go to Salma. She'll tell you what I couldn't. Gentle piano fades in again. Slow transition sound. When I reached her house, Aunt Salma looked older than I remembered. Her eyes were red like she hadn't slept in days. She hugged me tightly, then pulled back to study my face. You look just like her, she said softly. Just like your mother when she was your age. I smiled weakly. You said you needed to tell me something? She motioned for me to sit. The house smelled of rosewater and old wood. Family photos lined the walls. My mother's smile frozen in time beside faces I barely recognized. Salma took a deep breath and said, There's something you were never told, something your mother carried all her life. My hands trembled slightly. What do you mean? She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her shawl. Your mother didn't want you to grow up with pain. But the truth, it's time you knew. Camera would slowly pan in on the narrator's face. A soft, tense pause in music. I could hear the clock ticking. Outside, rain tapped gently on the windows. And inside, my whole world began to shift. Even before the words left her mouth. Aunt Salma's words hung in the air like smoke. You could almost see them forming between us. Fragile and dangerous. I felt my stomach tighten. My fingers rested on the teacup she'd handed me, but I didn't drink. I just waited. She looked at me for a long time before speaking again. Your mother was never good at hiding her feelings, she said quietly. But she was good at keeping secrets. Especially one. I swallowed hard. What kind of secret? She sighed. The kind that changes how you see yourself. My heart raced. The kind of secret that changes how you see yourself. What could that even mean? Please, Auntie, I whispered. Just tell me. She hesitated again. Her eyes filled with tears. Your father, Yusuf. He wasn't your biological father. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The world around me blurred. The ticking clock, the rain, the faint smell of cardamom in the air. What? What did you say? Salma reached out, placing her hand over mine. You were born before your mother married Yusuf. Your real father was someone she loved when she was very young. It was a time when the family was poor, and your grandfather wouldn't allow her to marry him. I pulled my hand away slowly. My lips trembled as I spoke. That can't be true. Mama and Baba, they were married before I was born. I've seen the pictures. Yes, Salma said softly. The wedding happened. But you were already on the way. Yusuf knew, and he agreed to raise you as his own. I stared at her, feeling my heart sink deeper with every word. No, I whispered. No, that doesn't make sense. He loved me. He called me his daughter. And he meant it, she said. He truly did. But the truth was always there, buried beneath the love. I leaned back in the chair, feeling like the ground had disappeared. All my life, I'd felt safe under my father's quiet strength. I'd admired him, trusted him, believed he was part of me. And now, this woman, my mother's sister, was telling me that wasn't true. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just whispered, Why didn't she tell me? Salma looked away, because she was afraid. Afraid you'd think less of her. Afraid you'd hate her for what happened. I closed my eyes. Images flooded my mind. My mother brushing my hair by the window, my father fixing my bicycle, their laughter echoing through the house. All those moments, were they lies? Or just love wrapped around silence? Who was he? I asked quietly. My real father. Salma hesitated again. He was a man named Rahim. He worked in the city when your mother met him. They were in love, but your grandfather didn't approve. He was from a different background, and your mother was too young. When she found out she was pregnant, he promised he'd come back for her, but he never did. Her voice cracked a little on the last word. Never did? I asked. She shook her head. A few months later, your grandfather arranged her marriage to Yusuf. He was kind, patient, and willing to give her and you a name. Your mother accepted, not out of love at first, but gratitude. I felt tears welling up. Did Baba know? Yes, she whispered. He knew everything before they married. But he loved her, and over time, he loved you too. You were his in every way that mattered. I sat there in silence. My chest felt heavy, my throat dry. I wish she had told me, I said softly. Even once. She wanted to, Salma replied. So many times. But every time she tried, she couldn't find the courage. She didn't want you to carry her pain. I nodded slowly, trying to breathe through the ache. I don't know what to do with this, I said. Salma squeezed my hand. You don't have to do anything. Just remember that love, real love, doesn't depend on blood. Her words sounded kind, but they didn't reach the storm inside me. I left her house in silence. The rain had stopped, but the streets were wet and gleaming. Each step home felt heavier than the last. At home, Rehan noticed something was wrong immediately. He asked, "What happened?" "You look pale." I just shook my head. "I need some time." That night, after our daughter went to sleep, I sat by the window staring out into the dark. The streetlight flickered, the air smelled like wet soil, and I could hear my husband quietly moving around the kitchen, trying to give me space. In my mind, I kept seeing my father's smile. The way he used to pat my shoulder when I did well in school, the way he said, "You're my pride," and now, he wasn't even my father. I whispered to myself, what am I supposed to feel? Grateful? Betrayed? I didn't know. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. Every photo in the house, my parents' wedding, our family picnics, birthdays, all of it felt different now. Like the colors had faded. Rehan tried to comfort me. He said, "You still had a father who loved you." That hasn't changed, but it had changed, at least for me, because now every memory carried a shadow, a question mark I couldn't erase. One evening, I found myself in the attic, sorting through old boxes my mother had left behind. I told myself I was just organizing, but deep down I was searching for something, anything that could help me understand. There were photo albums, letters, and her old diary tied with a faded blue ribbon. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were pages of her handwriting, small, neat, and full of emotion. At first it was ordinary, recipes, grocery lists, memories of my childhood. But a few pages in, the tone changed. She wrote about someone named R. At first, I thought it was Rehan, my husband, but then I realized the entries were decades old. R smiled today when he saw the baby's scan photo. He said she'll have my eyes. I hope he's right. I hope one day we can tell her the truth, together. My hands shook as I read. The next page was torn. The next after that, smudged with tears. Father says R will never be part of our family. I feel like I'm dying inside. I love him, but I can't fight them anymore. They've chosen Yusuf. They say it's for the best. I stopped reading. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, so it was true. Every word Aunt Salma said. But as I turned another page, something caught my breath. A folded letter, tucked carefully between the sheets. It was addressed to me. For my daughter, when she's ready. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. My dearest child, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to tell you myself. Please forgive me. I wanted to protect you, not deceive you. Yusuf loved you as his own from the day you were born. He was the one who held you first, not me. He whispered your name and promised to raise you with love, no matter whose blood ran in your veins. If you ever feel lost, remember this. Love makes a family, not secrets. But sometimes we keep secrets because we love too much. I'm sorry for the silence. I hope one day you'll understand. With all my love, Mama. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. the kind of cry that comes from a place you didn't know existed. Later that night, Rahim found me sitting on the attic floor surrounded by papers. He knelt beside me, touched my shoulder gently, and asked, "Did you find what you were looking for?" I looked up at him, my face wet with tears. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I think I understand her now." He didn't say anything else. He just held me. And for the first time since learning the truth, I didn't feel angry, just empty and somehow full at the same time. Because part of me finally realized my mother had carried this alone all her life. The guilt, the fear, the silence. She'd chosen to suffer quietly just to keep my world peaceful. Maybe that was love after all. After that night, I couldn't sleep for days. I kept thinking about my mother's letter, her words replaying in my mind like a lullaby I couldn't stop hearing. Love makes a family, not secrets. But even though her words were tender, they left me with one burning question. Who was he? Who was the man she loved enough to risk everything for, yet lost before I was born? I told myself it didn't matter. My father, Yusuf, was the man who raised me, loved me, sacrificed for me. That should have been enough, and yet something inside me still needed to know. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the ache of wanting to complete the picture of who I was. I didn't want to replace my father. I just wanted to understand the part of my story that had been erased. A few days later, I went back to see Aunt Salma. She opened the door and smiled sadly, as if she'd been expecting me. "I thought you might come back," she said. "I found her letter," I told her quietly. "She wrote about him." "About Rahim," Salma nodded. "She always hoped you'd read it one day." "Do you know where he is?" I asked. Her face changed, part surprise, part worry. "Child, after all these years, why look for him now?" I hesitated, because I need to understand. I'm not angry. I just want to see the truth for myself. She looked at me for a long moment before sighing. "The last I heard, he moved to Lahore. Started a small business there, but that was decades ago. I don't even know if he's still alive. Can you tell me his full name?" She hesitated again, then finally whispered, "Rahim Akhtar." I repeated it softly. The name felt strange in my mouth, like saying a prayer in a language I barely remembered. That night, I sat with Rahim, holding my mother's letter in my lap. "I want to find him," I said quietly. He looked at me for a long moment. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I need to see for myself. I can't move on if I don't." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll come with you." I smiled faintly. "No, I think this is something I need to do alone." He didn't argue. He just placed his hand over mine and said, "Then I'll wait right here when you come back." A week later, I took a bus to Lahore. The journey was long. 6 hours of silence, thoughts, and blurred scenery outside the window. I kept seeing my mother's face, young and hopeful, then older and tired. I wondered what it must have felt like for her to carry that secret all her life. When I reached the city, I checked into a small guest house. The owner was kind, talkative, the kind of person who notices everything. "You're visiting family?" he asked casually as he handed me the keys. I smiled faintly. Something like that. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened my phone, searched his name, Rahim Akhtar Lahore. Hundreds of results came up, most unrelated. But one link caught my eye. A small furniture shop, family-run, on the outskirts of the city. The owner's name, Rahim Akhtar. My hands trembled slightly. I clicked the website. There was a photo. An older man, white hair, warm eyes, a tired smile. There was something familiar about the shape of his eyes. Something that tugged at my chest. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next day, I found myself standing outside the little shop. It was simple. Wooden furniture displayed near the entrance, the smell of varnish in the air. A small sign read, "Akhtar Woodworks, since 1984. I stepped inside. A man was sitting behind the counter, reading a newspaper. His hair was silver now, his hands rough and steady. He looked up when I entered. His eyes, kind, deep brown, met mine. "Assalamu alaikum," he said softly. "How can I help you?" For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. "Wa alaikum assalam," I whispered. "Are you Mr. Rahim Akhtar?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. Have we met?" I hesitated, trying to steady my breathing. "My name is Aisha Yusuf." At the sound of my name, something shifted in his face. His eyes widened, his voice caught. "Yusuf," he whispered. "Layla's husband's name was Yusuf," I nodded. "Layla was my mother." He froze. For a few seconds, the world went completely silent. No footsteps, no street sounds, nothing. He stood up slowly, his hands trembling. "You're her daughter?" "Yes," I said softly. I think you might be my biological father." He pressed his hand to his mouth, his eyes filling with tears. "Oh God," he whispered. All these years, I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, feeling the weight of decades between us. A life that could have been, but never was. He motioned for me to sit. His hands shook as he poured 2 cups of tea. "I never stopped thinking about her," he said quietly. "Your mother. She was the love of my life." I listened as he spoke. "I wanted to marry her," he said, "but your grandfather refused. He said I wasn't good enough. I tried to fight, but I was young, broke, and scared. When she stopped answering my letters, I thought she'd moved on." "She didn't," I said quietly. "She wrote about you. She loved you till the end." His eyes filled again. "I came back for her 2 months later, but they said she was married. I saw her once, from a distance, holding a baby. You." He paused, his voice breaking. "You had her eyes. I knew it instantly. I wanted to run to her to hold you, but she looked happy. So I walked away, tears rolled down my cheeks." "She wasn't happy," I whispered. "Not really. She just wanted peace." He nodded slowly, staring at his hands. "I always wondered if you knew about me." "I didn't," I said. "Not until recently." He looked up. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head, wiping my tears. "No, I don't even know you well enough to hate you. I just wish things had been different." He smiled sadly. "So do I." We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the afternoon sun poured through the window, dust dancing in the light. He showed me some photos, an old one of him and my mother, smiling beside a half-built house. "She wanted to live here one day," he said quietly. "We were going to build it together." I traced my mother's face with my eyes. She looked so alive, so full of hope. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside was a bracelet, delicate, silver, engraved with tiny initials, L and R. "I kept it all these years," he said. It was hers. "She left it behind the last time I saw her." He handed it to me. "It belongs with you now." I took it, holding it gently in my palm. It felt light, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. When I finally left the shop, the sun was setting. The streets glowed gold and soft pink. Rahim stood at the doorway, watching me go. Before I left, he said quietly, Tell your mother I never stopped loving her." I smiled sadly. "I think she already knows." He nodded, and I walked away. As I turned the corner, I looked back one last time. He was still standing there, an old man holding on to a memory. The journey back home felt lighter somehow, though tears came and went like passing clouds. For the first time since learning the truth, I felt complete. Not happy, not sad, just whole. When I reached home, Rehan was waiting. He opened the door before I could even knock. I smiled through my tears. I found him. He took my bag quietly, led me inside, and said, "And?" I sat down, exhaling. "He's just an old man now, but kind, gentle. He loved her once, and I think he never stopped." Rahim nodded softly. Do you feel better? I thought for a moment, then said, Not better, but at peace. That night I sat by my daughter's bed as she slept. Her small hand rested in mine. I thought about how much a parent can love a child, enough to lie, to hide, to protect them from pain. And I finally understood my mother. She hadn't betrayed me. She'd saved me from a truth she thought would hurt me more than help. Maybe she was wrong to keep it hidden. But maybe she was just human. The weeks that followed felt quieter than any time I could remember. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. Walls that once echoed with laughter now stood still, waiting for something to shift. After the truth came out, everyone needed space. Mother spent her days sitting by the window, staring at the garden she loved. Father hardly spoke. He would pick up his newspaper, read a line or two, and put it back down. And I just wandered through each day, unsure of what to feel anymore. The anger had faded. The shock had settled. But what replaced it was something softer. A deep, quiet sadness that somehow felt like peace trying to find its way in. A quiet house one evening, I made tea for all of us. I placed the cups on the table, one for Father, one for Mother, and one for myself. The smell of cardamom filled the air. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then, Mother finally said, her voice almost trembling, I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to protect you from pain. I looked at her, at the tired lines on her face, the eyes that once seemed invincible, but now looked so human, so fragile. I know, I whispered. And I understand now. We didn't need more words. Sometimes silence is the only bridge left when love has been tested. Father reached out his hand, hesitant, unsure, and placed it over mine. It was the first time he had touched me since the secret came out. That small gesture said everything he couldn't put into words. Facing what was lost, the next morning, I went through the attic again. This time, I wasn't searching for answers. I was looking for memories. I found old family albums, photographs of birthdays, school plays, Sunday picnics. Faces smiling, arms wrapped around each other. It was strange how photographs could capture moments of happiness, even when so much pain was hidden behind them. As I turned the pages, I realized something. Even though the truth had broken me, it also set me free. It freed me from pretending, from trying to be the perfect child of a perfect family, because there was no such thing. We were flawed, complicated, and deeply human. The visit a few days later, my brother Daniel came to see me. It had been months since we last spoke. He looked older. Maybe the secret aged both of us in ways we couldn't see before. He hesitated at the doorway. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside. We sat in the same living room where everything once felt safe. Neither of us knew how to start. Then he finally said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you." I didn't know how. I looked at him for a long moment. There was no anger left in me, only tiredness, and maybe a bit of compassion. "You were trying to protect me too," I said. "Just like them." He sighed. "I thought if you never found out, maybe life would stay simple." "But secrets don't make life simple," I replied quietly. "They just make it quieter until the silence becomes too heavy to bear." He nodded slowly. And in that moment, we both understood something. Our family had lived inside a lie, not because we were cruel, but because we were scared. Scared of losing each other. Scared of facing pain. The letter a week later, I found another letter in Mother's handwriting. This one wasn't hidden. It was left on my desk. It said, "My dear, if you're reading this, I want you to know how much I love you. I spent years believing that hiding the truth was my way of protecting you. But now I see that love doesn't grow in silence. It grows in truth. Please forgive me for the years I let fear guide me instead of love. Mom. I sat there for a long time, holding that piece of paper, letting every word sink in. And for the first time in months, I cried, not out of anger or betrayal, but out of release. Those tears carried forgiveness, one drop at a time. Small beginnings, healing doesn't come with grand gestures. It comes in quiet mornings, in making breakfast again, in calling your brother just to ask how he's doing. It comes when you water your mother's plants because she's too tired, and when you sit with your father watching the sunset in silence, knowing you're both learning to be human again. Life slowly began to move again. The rhythm returned, gentle and uncertain, but it was movement. Some wounds don't close completely, but they stop bleeding. They become part of you. Soft reminders of what love and truth can cost, and what they can teach. Reflection. Sometimes I think back to that night. The night I found the letter that changed everything. If I hadn't found it, maybe we would have gone on pretending. Maybe I would have never known the truth. Maybe I would have never understood my parents as people, imperfect, scared, and yet full of love. We grow up thinking our parents are heroes. Then one day, we realize they're just people. People who tried their best with the pieces they were given. And maybe that's enough. The visit to her grave months later. After Mother passed, I visited her grave. It was a quiet morning. Mist still lingering on the grass. I brought her favorite flowers, white lilies, and placed them gently by the stone. I got your letter, I whispered. I understand now. The wind moved softly like a sigh. And for a moment, I could almost feel her there. Not in body, but in peace. You were right, Mom, I said, my voice trembling. Love doesn't grow in silence. It grows in truth. Final realization, as I walked back home, I realized something important. We spend our lives searching for answers, thinking they